Now, it feels like I've been waiting forever to make this video, partly because it's been well over a week now since the final episode of Season 2 of The Mandalorian, yet I didn't want to make videos about Luke's return too soon and potentially spoil it for a lot of fans. And partly it feels like forever because, well, it's been over 37 years since we've seen the real Luke Skywalker on screen. And yeah, I know what some of you out there will say or are saying, which is part of the reason why I'm making this video, that we already did see the real Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, that his appearance there and the way he was portrayed perfectly aligns with how Luke was in the original trilogy, that absolutely nothing was off about him, and that's how it all turned out for him. And furthermore, now a lot of people are saying something very similar about what he did in The Mandalorian, that him coming for Grogu shows just how confident he is in himself and his own abilities, how much he believes in the mighty Skywalker blood running through his veins, and it was that confidence or belief in himself that led to his failure with Ben Solo. And so they say this is not only the very same Luke Skywalker from The Last Jedi, but it's setting up that movie perfectly. And never minding here the fact that overconfidence was actually the weakness of Palpatine, which Luke pointed out to him in Return of the Jedi, but this really kind of implies that Luke was always in a damned if you don't, damned if you do type situation. It implies the whole story was always about setting Luke up to automatically or ultimately fail, because honestly, what else was Luke supposed to do about either of these two situations, about either Grogu or his nephew Ben? What exactly was he supposed to do when he hears the call of a powerful Force user like Grogu, or when he sees that his nephew of all people has all this potential, but also has some dark tendencies? Should he have ignored them both and said to himself, who am I to train these two? Oh, wait a second. As far as I know, I'm the last of the Jedi, as told to me by Yoda, and that I'm supposed to pass on what I've learned because I'm the only hope to restore the Jedi Order, which could theoretically protect the galaxy for another 1,000 generations. And to sort of use a sports analogy here, when building a team or a new Jedi Order, you're obviously going to seek out the best of the best, the top prospects, and certainly both Grogu and Ben Solo are #1 draft picks. So what exactly was he supposed to do about either one of them? Was he supposed to say, I can't train them because I might fail? I mean, what kind of attitude would that be? Well, I'll tell you what kind it is. It's one that actually would have or should have led to his failure. Because like pretty much anything worth being or doing in real life, becoming a Jedi takes a certain level of confidence or belief in yourself, and probably a pretty high level. And usually people are only successful when they do indeed believe in themselves. Go figure. Heck, this is even a lesson we see Yoda teach Luke right in The Empire Strikes Back, when him not believing he can lift his X-Wing out of the swamp because it's too big, leads to him not being able to lift his X-Wing out of the swamp. And Yoda basically says to him, the only reason you failed is because you didn't think you could do it. You didn't believe in yourself enough. But I guess somehow that guy would eventually become so overconfident that he thought he could do absolutely anything. And I guess we're supposed to believe this began to happen after he brought his father back to the light side, which is the last we see of his story, so of course we'd have to make that assumption. After, in a sort of roundabout way, you could argue he does defeat Darth Vader and Darth Sidious. That afterwards he thought to himself, of course I can rebuild the Jedi Order now, because I took down 2 Sith Lords with ease, and because I'm Luke effing Skywalker. Even though it wasn't actually faith or belief in himself that led to his victory at the end of Return of the Jedi. It was belief and faith in someone else, in his father. It was Anakin Skywalker coming back to the light who fulfilled the prophecy and destroyed the Sith, and this return was, of course, facilitated by Luke. Again, believing in the goodness of his father. It had nothing to do with Luke believing in his own ability, which is in no way to, of course, diminish what he did. And really here, if you wanted to set up Luke becoming overconfident for the sequel trilogy at the end of Return of the Jedi, he should have rolled right into the second Death Star and easily taken down Palps and Vader. Because if he'd done that, I'd be far more willing to believe that Luke could become a bit full of himself or a bit overconfident. But he actually does the exact opposite. Luke knows he has no chance against either Vader or Palpatine, much less both of them at the same time. He knows his only hope is bringing his father back to the light. So if anything, after all this, I think there's a better chance that there might still be some lingering self-doubt within Luke, not overconfidence. In fact, I think a much more intriguing Luke post-Return of the Jedi story, if you want to continue his arc and his growth as a character, and of course you're going to want to, was to make him a little doubtful, especially in regards to teaching others. Have him struggle to figure out or decide upon just what is the correct way to train the next generation of Jedi. instead of giving us the story that we got where we see that he's already failed at rebuilding the Jedi Order. I mean, it's so sad to think, but the sequels could have brought so much more to Star Wars. They could have, through Luke, answered many of the tough questions about the Jedi that people had after the prequels. They could have explored if a strict adherence to the Jedi Code, if giving up attachments and all that, was actually the correct path or not. Or if it was maybe where the Jedi of the prequels had gone wrong. As I've said before, the irony of Anakin Skywalker's story is attachments led him to the dark side, but they also brought him back to the light. So keeping that in mind, why not try to take the story full circle and have the sequel sort of explore this contradiction through Luke and the decisions he makes in regards to his new Jedi Order? I'm not saying that's the only thing they'd be about, but it could have been a huge part of it. Why not connect it all the way back to Episode 1 and Qui-Gon Jinn, the Jedi who was supposed to train Anakin, and show that perhaps he was right all along about just trusting your instincts and following the will of the Force, that the more you try and structure all of this, the more you miss the point of what a Jedi is really meant to do. And all of this then could have even deepened the tragedy of his death. What would have or could have been if Qui-Gon had trained Anakin, how much war and suffering could have been avoided, as well as filling out and enhancing the overall story as we have it made clearer just what Jedi are supposed to do and how they should do it. Instead, with the sequels we did get, all we have is a story that just sort of leaves that all hanging in the air still, that answers no real questions about the Jedi and or holds no sort of deeper meaning for Star Wars. Which is really one of my biggest problems with the sequels. They have no connection to the overall story, and more thought seems to be put into retelling the story rather than adding to it. Which ultimately leads to this sense of disconnect, or maybe even an eerie sort of deja vu, or like it's an episode of The Twilight Zone, where there's this odd sense of familiarity, yet nothing is as it should be, where I can recognize the names and faces of all these old characters, but they've all been reset and sent back to square one. None of them are where you'd expect them to be after 30 years, and hence they feel like different characters altogether. And Luke is probably the best, or should I say worst, example of this. There's a reason why even Mark Hamill himself has said he had to think of him as a different character, like he was playing Jake Skywalker. And when the actor says they have to put themselves into a whole different mindset when playing a character they've played before, well, maybe that should be a sort of red flag. And I have to say it really feels like Rian Johnson approached Episode 8 with the mindset of wanting to tell his story, and he used Luke Skywalker to do it, instead of looking at how we could actually tell a story using Luke Skywalker that expanded Star Wars. And look, as I've said many, many times before, you can like or love the sequels if you want. You can love the way Luke Skywalker was portrayed in those movies. That's completely fine, and I have no issue with you whatsoever. To each their own. But I'm afraid I do have to disagree with you, especially about The Last Jedi being a natural progression of the character. If anything, it not only misses the point of the character, but it makes no sense that he'd become overconfident when, as the original trilogy goes on, he actually shows less confidence in himself, or perhaps I should say, more humility. Well, that's all I've got for you this time, and for better or worse, this probably won't be the last video you get from me about Luke Skywalker, so I do hope you enjoyed this one because there will be more to come. Either way here, it's time to tell me what you think. Does the original trilogy and now The Mandalorian set up Luke in The Last Jedi, or do these things actually do the opposite? Whatever your thoughts on the matter are, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.